Okay, welcome everybody. Well, thank you for joining us on this Tuesday afternoon. I appreciate everybody taking the time to participate in this first webinar that we're going to be holding about the seal of recommendation. Really appreciate you joining this afternoon and really to learn why we're considering the seal a really big deal and kind of talk to you a little bit about what the seal of recommendation stands for here at the foundation, but also give you some background on what it is that we're doing and some of the science behind the seal. There will be an opportunity to do some questions at the end, but for right now, let's get going. I'm Dan Latour, the Executive Director of the Skin Cancer Foundation, and I'm here joined by Dr. Anna Chien, who is with Johns Hopkins. I'll tell you a little bit more about her in a little bit. She's on our Photobiology committee, and we'll talk to you about what the seal recommendation is, how the process works, and hopefully everybody gets a great understanding for why we do believe that this is in fact a big deal. Let me go through a little bit of housekeeping for how this will work first, and then we can take it from there. First of all, this webinar is being recorded. It'll be available afterwards as well if someone doesn't have an opportunity to make it. Everybody's been muted. And if you do have questions, there's an opportunity to do a Q&A at the end. If we can't get to every one of the questions, which we hope we can certainly follow up with an email afterwards. By registering for this event, you will be receiving emails from the foundation in the form of our monthly newsletter. You can opt out anytime you want, but we've got great tips about sun protection, different programs that are going on here at the foundation. And you can also use it as your monthly reminder to do a self-check and look for skin cancers. A little bit about the Skin Cancer Foundation. We are the leading organization talking about the prevention, early detection, and treatment about skin cancer. We've been a little over 40 years in existence, started in 1979, and we're an educational organization that really focuses on teaching people what they need to know and how they can help prevent skin cancer. Again, find it early if they do in fact develop it, but then also we're a good resource for finding out opportunities for treatment and explaining sometimes pretty complicated things in a simple way. Our mission itself is to save and improve lives. We say that because we know we can save people's lives, but many people don't often think about the impact that skin cancer has on the quality of life, whether it's scarring, disfigurement, and other things that affect how people live. So saving and improving lives, really through empowering people to take a proactive approach to sun protection, early detection, and then again, seeking out prompt and effective treatment. The foundation has lots of great programs that cover a lot of different areas, everything from screening programs to digital resources that are available to people. We have plenty of printed materials in the form of posters, brochures, or annual journal. And we have a big program called the Big C, all initiatives intended to give people what they need to protect, prevent, and basically live a healthy life free from skin cancer. So, let's get into the seal of recommendation specifically. The seal was designed as an educational program really to help people understand what it is they need to look for in a sun protection product. The seal was created back in 1981, which is quite a while ago, a little over 40 years ago in of itself. And there are quite a few products that have participated in the seal program over the years. It can be found in all categories of sun protection products, from sunscreens to shade products to window film, sunglasses, hats, clothing, all types of different accessories. And we'll do different webinars throughout the next couple of months to talk more about this. We currently do have 600 sunscreens in the program displaying the seal of recommendation, and you can see that throughout the United States at different retailers, and in oftentimes you can find it around the world. It's definitely an international program for sure. The Skin Cancer Foundation has a product finder on our website that highlights all of the different seal of recommendation products. Everything that's in there is listed on that product finder, and it can help you divide through categories to find the product that you're looking for. As it relates to how a product gets the seal, you're going to get some great information from Dr. Chien. But basically, the scientific data is reviewed by the Foundation's Photobiology committee. And the Photobiology committee is a group of doctors who specialize in sun protection and understand how UV light interacts with the skin itself. So there's a process that they go through. You'll learn a little bit more about that today. And it's really their expertise and credibility that make this program run. It's a great asset for the foundation. It's a great asset for the public. And they all generously volunteer their time to be a part of this program. So we thank them for that. And with that, I'm going to introduce you to Dr. about her. She's the Associate Professor and Vice for the Department of Dermatology at Johns Hopkins School of Medicine. She is also the Medical Director of the Howard County Dermatology Practice and directed the department's Cutaneous Translational Research Program for over 10 years. She's on the board of the Photodermatology Society. Her clinical interests include skin aging, photoprotection, rosacea, and general dermatology. And she's been a member of the Skin Cancer Foundation's Photobiology Committee since 2016. So with that, I hope you'll all help us welcome Dr. Chien as she takes you through her roles and responsibilities with the seal recommendation.
Great, thank you, Dan, and hello, everyone. Thanks so much for having me here today. As Dan alluded to, I am a member of the Skin Cancer Foundation's Photobiology Committee. There are 6 of us dermatologists on the committee with an interest in photomedicine, and many of us also serve as board members on the Photodermatology Society. So it's really a great group with a great area of interest for us in terms of photomedicine. We work together with the Skin Cancer Foundation year-round. As Dan mentioned, we review the seal applications to ensure that each sunscreen product that earns the seal meets or exceeds our requirements for safe and effective sun protection. Additionally, the committee has formal and many informal meetings to discuss what's at the forefront of photomedicine and sun protection. We review educational materials for the foundation and frequently work with the media on content related to the effects of sun and on skin cancer prevention. I think many of us will notice as we shop online or in stores for sunscreens that there are so many products out there on the market. And our hope as the Photobiology Committee is to ensure that the public is well informed and up to date on sun protection and to help consumers make the best decisions when choosing sunscreen products. So with that, today in this webinar, I'd like to spend a little time talking specifically about the 2 seals that the committee reviews, the daily use and the active seals of recommendation. And these are our 2 sunscreen seals. And before we dive into the 2 seals, let's first start with some general information regarding sunscreens. So when I look for sunscreens, there are 2 key factors I consider: the SPF and then whether the product is broad spectrum. I also consider whether the product is water resistant, depending on the activity I'll be engaged in, and we'll touch upon that in a little bit. But starting with the SPF or sun protection factor, this value primarily measures the level of protection against UVB and to a small extent UVA as well. It is a measure of how much UV radiation is required to produce sunburn on skin that's protected by sunscreen in comparison to the amount of sun required to produce sunburn on skin without the sunscreen protection. So for instance, an SPF of 30 means that you're protected 30 times longer with that sunscreen compared to without the sunscreen product. In addition to the SPF, the second component I look for is whether it is broad spectrum. And broad spectrum simply means that the formula will protect against both UVA and UVB rays. And we know now that both types of rays can cause DNA damage in skin cells, which can lead to skin cancer, not to mention skin aging changes such as wrinkles and brown spots. In the past, most sunscreens only included information on product labels about protection against UVB, or the portion of the sun that causes sunburn, and not UVA, which are the rays that can cause tanning and much of the premature aging changes. Now that UVA dangers are very well known, broad spectrum sunscreen provides very clear information on product labels about the protection against both UVB and UVA. So when we evaluate the seals, we are specifically evaluating these properties of sunscreen. And this applies for both of our seals. For the first sunscreen seal, the active seal recommendation, it means that this sunscreen is water resistant and has a minimum SPF of 30. Sunscreens that carry this particular seal, they're meant to protect your skin during extended sun exposure. May it be for recreational activities at the beach or at the park or for outdoor work. If someone plans to be outdoors for long periods, this is a seal I would recommend looking for. Sunscreen with this seal also has a water resistance requirement, as sun damage can occur if your sunscreen washes off in waters or wears off with sweating. And the terms water resistant and very water resistant are used here and means that SPF is maintained after 40 minutes of activity in water or with sweating if it's water resistant. If it's very water resistant, the SPF is maintained after 80 minutes of activities in water or with sweating. With that said, no sunscreen is waterproof. And actually, in fact, FDA rules prohibit sunscreens manufacturers from using the term waterproof. And with that, that's why we always recommend reapplication, because no sunscreen is perfect and no sunscreen is waterproof. Reapplication is really key component of good sun protection. The second seal is our daily use seal of recommendation. And this seal is predominantly found in skincare and cosmetic products. The minimum SPF for this seal is 15. And for this particular seal, I like to think of these products as they protect you from incidental sun exposure, the kind that occurs over short periods of time, such as walking to and from our cars, going to work, running errands, sunlight that comes through window glass in our offices, in our homes, and in our cars. And all of us actually get a bit of incidental sun exposure. That's why it's critical to have sun protection on a daily basis. Tell my patients, it's almost like brushing your teeth. Something that we do daily, may it be in the middle of winter or on a cloudy day. And sunscreens with this particular seal, they're great for this purpose, the day-to-day sun protection that all of us need. Many of you are probably aware that all sunscreens on the market are classified by the FDA as over-the-counter drugs and are required to submit testing before they are available to the general public. However, for us, just because a product is approved by the FDA doesn't necessarily mean it meets the standards for our seals. We require more data and more testing than FDA, and our review process is more stringent. 2 members of the Photobiology committee are required to review every seal application and sign off on them before the seal is granted. So when we look for a product, when we evaluate the data, we are essentially looking for 4 critical items. We're looking for the UVA protection. We're looking for UVB protection. Additionally, we are interested in whether the product is phototoxic or whether it creates a reaction on the skin when it's exposed to light. And finally, we also look at whether it causes irritation and allergies. Interestingly, the FDA actually doesn't require phototoxicity testing, which I think is an important factor to consider when evaluating sunscreens. Phototoxicity is a skin reaction that can occur when certain substances are exposed to light. So this is critical in sunscreen safety to ensure that the sunscreen ingredients do not create a skin reaction when exposed to UV light. We also require for all the products that 20 subjects pass the irritation and allergy test, while the FDA requires only 10. Sunscreen sensitivity is not uncommon, so it's important for us to have this additional level of assurance on the products in which we approve for the seal. In addition, we review every formula that applies to earn the seal, even if small changes are made to the formula. We don't know how a new ingredient will affect the sun protective qualities of that product, or if it's an ingredient that might irritate the skin. We know that people don't use enough sunscreen as it is, and if the products irritate their skin, it will become that much more challenging for them to use it. So with these 2 seals of recommendation for daily and active sunscreens, the Photobiology Committee strives to ensure sunscreens with these seals are safe and effective and guide consumers as they choose sun protection products to prevent skin cancer. So I hope I convey why the seal is important to me, my colleagues on the Photobiology Committee, to everyone here at Skin Cancer Foundation, and I'm happy to take questions.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Chien. We actually have quite a few good questions that are coming in. So I will walk us through these, and some I will send your way, and other ones I can answer from the foundation's perspective. And the first one is perfect for you as well. So Dr. Chien, what offers better protection, mineral sunscreens or chemical sunscreens?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think we're asked this every day in clinic. And maybe to back up a little bit, I think it's good to keep in mind that actually all sunscreen products, may it be mineral or chemical, They're like all molecules, they're all chemicals in a way. So I try to maybe to minimize confusion. I like to use the terms organic and inorganic to describe these categories. So inorganic, or oftentimes what we know as physical blockers, mineral ingredients, these are the titanium dioxide, the zinc oxide products. So these inorganic ingredients, they stay on top of the skin and they deflect UV rays. They work pretty quickly once they're applied versus chemical sunscreens or organic sunscreens, which tend to need a little time to absorb into the skin. Another nice feature of inorganic sunscreens that they tend to have very low allergic and irritancy potential. Chemical sunscreens, or what I like to call organic sunscreens, they work by absorbing UV rays and reducing its penetration into the skin. They typically contain a range of ingredients. There are many out there, such as avobenzone, aminobenzoic acid, that together help to protect against both UVA and UVB radiation. And I think it depends on the individual. People with sensitive skin, they may prefer sunscreens with an inorganic ingredients, such as the zinc or the titanium, that can cause less irritation. There are other folks who they prefer organic sunscreens since they tend to be a little bit more cosmetically elegant and easier to apply compared to the physical sunscreens, which tends to leave a little bit of a whitish cast on the skin. But I think the important thing is both kinds of sunscreen have proven to be effective in protecting the skin from the sun. And ultimately, what I always say to patients is that the best sunscreen is the one that you will use. So pick something with the criteria that we talked about and something that you like the feel of, the smell of, that you know you will use regularly.
That's great. I think you really hit the nail on the head there. And I think sometimes it's counterintuitive for people when they hear the word organic sunscreen. The words natural, and we talk about zinc and titanium and things like that, but it actually means something completely different in the world of sunscreen. So thank you for explaining that. There's actually another great question here for you as well. Let me just pull it up. Can you describe what sort of data you're reviewing? In other words, how is sunscreen tested? What is it that you're looking for specifically in the test itself?
Yeah, so, sunscreen testing is actually quite rigorous. I'll kind of try to summarize the high points and the data that we focus on the photobiology committee. So I mentioned previously, there were 4 main criteria that we are looking for as we evaluate the data. So one is UVB protection. So this is actually a human test. So usually what happens is they're testing volunteers' tendency to burn by shining a UV lamp. It almost simulates UV light, solar radiation, and they shine this on their backs. And this determines the amount of time in the sun that it takes to make their unprotected skin red or for them to develop a sunburn. So how this is done is a technician in the lab will apply specific amounts of several sunscreens on the volunteer's back. They let it in, they rub it in, wait for 15 minutes or so, and then direct the solar simulator on the skin again. So to put this in more practical terms, so for instance, if an SPF 30 sunscreen is being tested and the patch of protected skin goes 30 times longer than the unprotected skin before sunburn occurs, it shows that the product is at least an SPF of 30. And this is done across the 10 study volunteers, and the average results confirms the SPF rating. UVA testing, on the other hand, is actually a lab test. The technicians will apply the sunscreen to a special material in a lab dish. And again, they shine light on it, simulating the rays of the UV spectrum to measure UV absorption. And as a side note, UV wavelengths, they're measured in nanometers. So we refer to kind of certain wavelengths as 300, 400 nanometers, et cetera, as we're billionths of a meter. And the waves in the UVB portion, they're a little bit shorter. They range from 290 to 320 nanometers, whereas UVA is a little bit longer, ranging from 320 to 400 nanometers. So in this particular testing for UVA, a mathematical equation is used to convert the test results into a graph that we call the absorption curve. And to demonstrate that a sunscreen is broad spectrum, it must have a critical wavelength of at least 370 nanometers, meaning 90% of the formula's UV absorbance occurs at 370 nanometers. And for UVA, usually the test is repeated because we want to ensure the product is photostable, meaning the ingredients, they won't break down after exposure to UV rays, but continue to protect the skin. Now, it's another test associated with the SPF rating would be the water resistance. And this is, again, another human test. And the technicians will apply the sunscreens as they did previously on the volunteer's back. And this is followed by the volunteers will sit essentially in kind of a control hot tub. The water is manipulated to stimulate the turbulence you get when you're swimming. After 40 or 80 minutes, depending on what the sunscreen label claims, the volunteers then come out of the water. The SPF test is repeated to make sure the product did not wash off, but still protect the skin from the UV rays. So in addition to those, the Skin Cancer Foundation, we also look for contact irritancy as well as phototoxic reaction. For contact irritancy, the technician, they will apply the sunscreen on the volunteers in small patches on the skin. This is kept on for 24 hours, in which point the volunteers return to check whether the product has caused a skin reaction. And lastly, for phototoxic reaction, the lab will apply, again, the sunscreens to specific areas on the volunteer's skin, expose these areas to UV light to see if there are any skin reactions. And for a product to receive the seal, 20 volunteers must have passed this particular test with no phototoxic reactions. So you can see it's actually quite extensive in terms of the sunscreen testing. And so by the time a sunscreen has passed all of these tests and earned the seal, consumers can be confident that the product's safe and effective for sun protection.
That's great. All good information. We're getting question after question here. So I'm actually going to combine the next two because I think they're very closely related. The first question is, and I can answer it myself, is how many applications does the foundation receive each year? And the answer is between 80 and 100. Some years are a lot more than others. With COVID, it kind of threw off our numbers a little bit because one year was a little bit more delayed and next year was people making up for a lot of lost time. So we probably went above and below those averages. But for the most part, it's between 80 and 100 applications each year that are being then sent out to our Photobiology committee for review. So it's not a small number. And then the other question that I can answer as well as related to that is how long does it take for a product to earn the seal? There's two ways to answer that question. And I think I'll start with the first one, which is once the application is provided to the foundation, and it's been pre-processed to make sure that everything in there is complete and ready to send off to the Photobiology committee, it takes about 2 months. It takes about 2 months from the time the completed application is received, processed, shipped off, reviewed. Any questions are discussed either between the foundation and the committee or the committee members themselves to the time when it's formally approved and the application is, like I said, formally approved and the people responsible for it are notified. It can take much, much longer when you're factoring in the product itself, meaning that's from the completed application. If we're talking about the product itself, there's all the testings that Dr. Chien just took us through. It could take months, it could take years. So the process of a sunscreen deciding that it wants the seal all the way to the time where it's done really depends on how quickly all those tests are completed at the labs and the independent facilities to how long it takes them to get the application completed into the foundation. So it could be 2 months from start to finish, and it could be a much longer time. Okay, another question here. Congrats on the work. How do you view the difference between SPF requirements for UVB, UVA protection for broad spectrum sunscreens? For example, SPF 50 is tested on UVB and will generally protect up to 1/3 of UVA. So how do we look at the differences between UVA and UVB protection for sunscreens?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. And it's tough. I think, and especially, in the US, I think some of the requirements and the testings for UVA and UVB are a little bit different compared to other countries. I think with what we have now, I still go back to sort of the SPF rating and then the broad spectrum that we talked about earlier in terms of how I educate patients, kind of how much of an SPF to look for, ensure something is broad spectrum that covers both the UVA and UVB range. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I think so. It's important balance. And I think we really only learned about UVA 10 or 15 years ago, and it was put into place by the FDA in 2010, give or take. So it's always still a learning process, and new technologies change every year as well. So that's part of what the Photobiology Committee does, is stay up on all the new technologies and changes in the industry itself. So thanks. I'm going to kind of wind down the questions and ask you one more. I think maybe time for an extra one. What's your favorite sunscreen? You can answer, and then if there's anything different to add, I can answer as well.
Yeah, so I think a good sunscreen really, as I discussed earlier, is something that someone likes the feel of, that they would use regularly. Personally, for me, day to day, I use a moisturizer with an SPF built in. If I know I will be outdoors a long periods, I will use a heavier sunscreen and reapply and try to combine it with other photoprotective measures, may it be hats or avoiding peak hours, looking for shade, sunglasses, etc.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. If anybody was asking me from a non-medical perspective, we have access to all different types of sunscreens here at the foundation. For the years we've been working with all of our partners, and it really is anything you're willing to use, because every individual person is different as to not only your tolerance for how much of a particular aesthetic is offered by a sunscreen. Some people like it smoother and silkier. Some people like it more chunky and chalkier white for more protection. Some are stickier, some are less, some are powders. So we really are comfortable by telling everybody it's really about using the sunscreen that you're most likely going to use on a regular basis, and then supplementing it with different products like hats and clothing and sunglasses. There really isn't a perfect scenario for any one sun protection category. It's really a kind of we joke about it sometimes and say it's part of this complete breakfast, right? You have to put it all together to make it work. And that includes just being in the shade and being smart about where your sun exposure is. So I think that's really about it in terms of the questions. If anything else kind of comes in at this point, we're a little bit out of time. We will answer questions and send some emails, so we have access to any other questions that are coming in. And you can always check our website as well. The foundation's website has answers to almost every question you can come up with proactively, and that's really kind of how we view our role in this space, is to make that information available to the public for almost anything they can come up with. So we definitely encourage you to reach out with questions even beyond this event. So Dr. Chien, is there anything you'd like to say in closing?
No, I think we covered many topics, and thanks for having me, Dan. It was a real pleasure.
I really appreciate it. I appreciate your time and such great information. So with that, I will thank everybody again for joining us. You can see the email up on the screen right now. That's seal@skincancer.org. If you have any questions or for any other information about the seal of recommendation. And I'll definitely say for everybody to look for the additional webinars that we're going to be doing on the topic of the seal and why it's such a big deal. And we'll talk about wearable sun protection, things like clothing, hats, and sunglasses on September 19th. And we're going to talk about sun protection for home and garden, things like shade products, window films, and auto glass on October 20th. So hopefully we've answered all the questions that we can during this short period of time, and appreciate everybody's participation. So thank you again, Dr. Chien. I hope everybody has a great rest of your day.